Next, we come to Charter Acts. Regulating Acts was mainly for East India Company. Until now, if you notice, there was this trading company, English East India Company, trying to rule India. The British government never said that they are the rulers of India. But in the Pitt's India Act, you saw that British government made a declaration that the Indian territory that was occupied by East India Company is now the British territory. Then they started giving Charter Acts. So now the British government is the main ruler of India, and they have given the authority to administer and take care to the English East India Company. So English East India Company is after all a business company, a company. It used to take license from the British government to come and trade in India and to carry out all the businesses. So this license was renewed every 20 years. So there were some rules the British government used to ask the English East India Company to follow. These were called the Charter Acts, the Charter Act of 1793, 1813, 1833 and 1853. As and when the charters were implemented once in 20 years, the new rules and regulations found fit by the British government was included in these acts. Among them, 1813 and 1833 are very important. Students, now we will study about the Charter Act of 1813. A little bit of background. Earlier, only English East India Company was given the license to trade with India. But there were so many other traders, independent traders, other companies who wanted to come and trade in India. So they had kept this demand to the British government that gave us the permission to trade freely with India as well. As a part of this Charter Act, the English East India Company was given license for 20 years, but they also gave freedom to all traders to trade freely with India. So the monopoly of English East India Company was gone. This act allowed this demand and authorized all interested persons to carry out trade in India. The free trade era then began in India. Second, a new era of license and authorization started. So if you want to trade with India, you must get a license and authorization. The board of directors, remember there was a board of directors, was vested with the powers to appoint the Governor General and Commander in Chief. 2 people were to be appointed, and this was the responsibility of board of directors. The churches were allowed to enter. So a lot of Christian missionaries came to India to establish churches, and they were directed to enrich the knowledge of Indians and also enhance the moral and spiritual life of Indians. Many Christian missionaries started arriving in India after this act, and with the expansion of Christianity and English education started taking place. So this is very important because it laid the foundation for English education in India, and also it led for free trade to take place. The Charter Act of 1833. So there is already free trade, Christian missionaries are here. What could be a new change that could be brought in by the British government? Let's look at it. It aimed at improving the Indian situation. Of course, it gave a 20 years license to the English East India Company. Let's see what were the main aspects. The Governor General of Bengal was named as the Governor General in India. Students, this mind map will be uploaded in the mind map section. If you all want to learn the points easily, you can just look at these 5 points here, and in a very easy way you will be able to remember and revise. The Governor General was vested with powers to direct, control and supervise all trades in India. The Central Government of Bengal had the final right to decide on issues of war, peace, diplomatic relationship with princely states of India. So the entire power was given to Governor General of Bengal. He was made the central authority. All the matters of war, peace, diplomacy were given in the hands of Governor General of Bengal, who is now the Governor General of India. The Governor General was mandated to put his difference of opinion with executive committee members in writing whenever he differed with the majority opinion. So students, the Governor General was given an executive committee. He was not given complete authority that, oh, you're the Governor General, whatever you like you can do. No, he had to consult with the committee, and if the committee believed that this is the right solution, but the governor believed no, that is the right solution. So if they had such clash or such difference of opinion, then he was to communicate with them in writing and consult before making any decision alone. The act barred any discrimination based on religion, birth and skin color. They said no discrimination. The Governor General was mandated to appoint a law professional. There was supposed to be a law member in his executive committee. All British companies were allowed to have trade relationship in India. Next students, now if you see, there's no more a charter. Now the British government rules India directly in the name of the Queen. Now the acts are called the British Government Acts. What is the background? Why this happened? Like for regulating acts, we saw there were Diwani rights that were being misused. Then we saw charter acts because there was this licensing system every 20 years. But now they are government acts, the British Government Acts. Why? So we know that the first war of Indian independence took place in the year 1857. Okay. Now such a major revolt took place. The British now reflected that okay, East India Company is probably not doing something right because such a big war had to be faced. It caused a lot of financial loss though the British won the war. So they decided that now we will rule directly and we'll make it more strict so that something like this doesn't happen again. So the Sepoy Mutiny took place due to the misadministration of the East India Company and anti-Indian acts in 1857. As a result, the administration of India was handed over to the British Queen from the East India Company. During this period, that is the period when the British Government Act of 1858, 1861, 1892, 1909, 1919 and 1935 were implemented. At each point, there would be some political developments because of which the British government would pass an act. Now we will look at each one of them. The first one, Indian Government Act of Break. The first one is the one that took place immediately after the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, the Indian Government Act of 1858. This act needs to be understood as to what has happened because almost all the laws in this were like a reaction to the first war of Indian independence. The administration of India came under the direct rule of the British government. Now the Queen of England, Queen Victoria, announced for the all-round development of India to be ensured by the British government. What are the important features? The license was cancelled to the English East India Company. Now India didn't have a mediator. So there were Indians, the East India Company, the British government. The East India Company was removed. There's British government and there are Indians in direct contact now. The post of Governor General was changed into Viceroy. Who was the first Viceroy of India? Almost asked every year. Lord Canning was the first Viceroy of India. There was a new post made called the Secretary of State for India in the British government. So in England, the British government used to sit. Students, just like how we have the agricultural department, finance department, railways and so on, in the British government, they also used to have departments. Department of India, Department of Finance and so on. So, to take care of Department of India, a new post was created called Secretary of State for India. The Secretary was a part of the British government and was responsible to see to it that the administration in India is taking place well. A Council of India was created in order to assist. So, the Secretary of State for India was given a council of 15 members to help him for good administration of India. Now, let's go to the next act, Indian Council Act of 1861. It is very important because it came into effect just 3 years after the Act of 1858. With this, Indians were allowed to participate in the process of creating laws. So, until now, in the Secretary of State for India, his council, the Governor General, his executive committee, they were only the British. There were no Indians. But this act allowed for Indians to be a part of these bodies. In order to understand the aspirations of Indians, representation was given to them. This is called the policy of assertion. What are the important features? Let's look at it. Indians were nominated to the Council of the Viceroy as non-official members. So, Indians were allowed to be in the Council of the Viceroy, but they were not official. The Viceroy was authorized to proclaim ordinances in case of emergency. Students, what is this ordinance? So, when there is Parliament that is in session and they want to pass a law, they introduce a bill, then they discuss the bill, then they vote on the bill, and finally it becomes a law. But what if there is an emergency? Like during the Nirbhaya rape case, there was an emergency to pass a law. So, in such cases, the President has the power to make a law, but it will be in effect temporarily until the Parliament comes and has a session and passes it through the regular procedure. So, this law that was made in case of emergency for an urgent situation is called an ordinance. This power was given to the Viceroy. Let's discuss. So, students, you all know that in 1885, the Indian National Congress was formed. The Congress used to believe that the British probably don't know the real situation in India, and maybe if we tell them that this is the situation in India, they may want to not exploit the Indians, they may want to make laws that are favorable. So, they used to constantly send petitions to the British government. As a result of those petitions, the Act of 1892 was passed that gave more representation for Indians in the legislative bodies. So, the critical view, the views expressed by the Congress organization towards the British administration led to the expansion of Indian representatives for governance. Let's look at the important features. The number of additional members in the regional and central legislative bodies was increased. The Legislative Council's authority was increased further by allowing discussion on budget. So, earlier they would just get a budget and they would pass it, but now discussion, they have to discuss whether this is right, it's wrong, whether it is good or does it make sense to spend so much money on this particular matter like railways or telegram and so on. They would discuss before they pass the budget. Provision was made to question the government on public issues by serving 6 days notice. So, now you have the provision that you can ask questions to the government saying, why are you doing this? Why are you spending so much money here? Why are you not taking care? There's a drought, there's a famine. So, you can ask questions by giving a 6-day notice. Now, let's look at the next act, the Indian Council Act of 1909. Students, whenever we study the Indian Councils Act, you should also understand what's happening in the background. So, in 1905, there was Swaraj movement or the Home Rule League that took place. It was a movement, a protest against the British rule, and they wanted to establish home rule in India. Now, the British has this carrot and stick approach wherein they will make some laws because they don't want Indians to protest again, because it makes administration very difficult. Imagine if the lawyers, the administrators, everyone, they are not going to work, they are going to protest. It creates a lot of hardship, right? So, they don't want this. So, they will give some incentives, but then they also make some laws that are very strict and stop people from becoming united for nationalism or any kind of freedom struggle. So let's look at what did the Indian Councils Act of 1909 do. It's also called Minto-Marley reforms. Okay, cut. There are two leaders. One is the Viceroy, who is in India, and there is Secretary of State for India in the British government in England. So the first name is Viceroy, the second name is Secretary of State for India. So Minto was the Viceroy, Marley was the Secretary of State for India. So the combined names together, and it's called the Act. This Act was used to divide and rule. The total number of Central Legislative Council members was increased from 16 to 60. The total number of Central Legislative Council members was increased to 60 from 16. Such a big number. The number of regional council members was also increased. So if you see, the number of members in both the councils, regional and central, were increased. Representation of the regional council was allowed through election. Notice, first time there are elections, but in the regional councils, not at the central council. Students, if you get confused in understanding what is regional council, what's the central council, it's very much the cut. You can compare it to the state government and the central government of today. In order to provide separate representation for Muslims, separate Electorate College was created. What is this? So let's say there are more Muslims in the regions of Pakistan, Balochistan, in the region of East Bengal. So here they formed separate electorates. Sir, 1 minute. What is separate? What is separate electorate college? So let's say in India the majority were Hindus, Muslims were in minority, so they wanted certain seats that would be reserved for Muslims alone, and even the voting would happen accordingly. So this was called separate electorate college. Now this is the way to divide Indians, a very smart policy by the British to affect the unity of Hindus and Muslims in the freedom struggle. Now let's look at Indian Council Act of 1919. Since Indians took part in the First World War, which took place between 1914 to 1919, they felt that now British will be generous in giving them freedom, in giving them independence. So let us look at what happened. Since Indians took active part in the First World War, Lord Montague, who was the Secretary of State for India, argued in favor of providing more representation to Indians in the matters of administration. He was in favor of allowing people's participation in the formation of government gradually. He said that yes, Indians should participate, but this would be gradual. Lord Chelmsford, who was the Viceroy then, gave out a lot of reform measures to the Constitution. Let's look at it. 1 minute. Now students, let's look at the various features of Montagu-Chelmsford reforms of 1919. It established for bicameral legislative body. There's a lower house that is directly elected and an upper house that has indirect elections. Diarchy was allowed at regional governments. Students, you should know diarchy, what it is, whether it is for central government or regional government. When did it come? When does it go? What happens? Because we will be using this several times. Break. What is diarchy? So there are two sets of rulers. One, the popular rulers who have been elected by the people, and there are the other rulers who are appointed by the Queen from the British government. Some subjects like justice, war, diplomacy, communications, transport was with the administration appointed by the Queen, and the remaining responsibility like roads, sanitation, water, These were given to the, so what happened? Subjects like public work, public health, sanitation, roads, forests, agriculture, fisheries, these were given to the popular ministers who were elected. So this division of powers or two governments to administer different subjects was called diarchy. It was there at the regional level or the state level, but in central level there was no such diarchy. There was the entire control of powers with only the council under the Viceroy. And High Commissioner was appointed for India, promised to improve local self-government. Provincial budget was separated from central budget. Separate Electorate College was now extended from just for Muslims to 6 Anglo-Indians and for Europeans. Very important, 1909 introduced separate electorate only for Muslims, but here it is for Muslims, 6 Anglo-Indians and even the Europeans. Now let's look at the Government of India Act 1935. From examination point of view, this is the most important. Okay, this act has acted as a base for the formation of the Indian Constitution. Almost all features that are there in this act were eventually taken in the Indian Constitution. The report submitted in 1928 under the leadership of Motilal Nehru was very instrumental in the formation of this act. Most of the provisions of the Indian Constitution are from this act. This act was applicable both to the Indian Principalities and also to the British India region. Let's look at the important features. It established for a federal system of Indian Principalities, British governed regions and Dominion states. What do we mean by Indian Principalities? Let's say a federal system of Indian Principalities, British governed regions and Dominion states was formed. Indian Principalities are princely states like the Mysore Kingdom, the Nizam of Hyderabad's kingdom and so on, who had their allegiance or loyalty to the British, but they were still ruled by these kings. British governed regions were those regions that were presidencies of British like Bengal, Bombay, Madras and so on. Dominion states were those who were autonomous under British rule. Rule. That were autonomous under the British rule, such as Mahi, Pondicherry and so on. Reserve Bank of India was established. Diarchy was established at the center. 1 minute. Sorry. Very important here is diarchy. If you remember from the previous act, diarchy was there in regional level, but it was not there at the central level. Here, as per this act, diarchy was introduced at the center and abolished from the regional level. The federal court was established. The federal court was also established. Though these acts served the purpose of the British interest, they did include the aspirations or dreams of Indians. Now, students, let's look at the fill in the blanks. Diwani Adalat in civil courts was introduced by Warren Hastings. The post of Superintendent of Police was created by Lord Cornwallis. The permanent zamindari system was implemented in Bengal and Bihar provinces in the year 1793. The land tax system was implemented by Alexander Reed, is called Rayatwari system. The British officer who supported the modern education in India is William Bentinck. The Regulating Act was implemented in the year 1773. Question 1. Illustrate the judicial system formulated through East India Company. A new judicial system started finding roots when the British rule began taking over from the Mughal rule. After the Battle of Buxar, the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam handed over Diwani right, or the right to collect taxes to the British. With this, dual administration came into effect in Bengal. Under this, they had the authority to collect land tax, civil and judiciary were given to Indian officials, whereas the British retained the authority to manage the revenue collected. Then they introduced centralized judicial system. According to this, the administrative plan was devised by Warren Hastings, who took over as the administrating governor in 1772. They set two kinds of courts, a Diwani Adalat or the civil court and a Fauzdari Adalat or the criminal court. The Hindus were given judgment based on the Hindu laws, and for the Muslims they followed the Shariat law. Slowly the British legal procedures were introduced in the criminal courts. Though the criminal courts were under the control of Qazis, at the topmost level there were the European officers. Next question, what are the measures undertaken at the time of British in the police system? So the police were responsible for maintaining internal law and order. They created the new post of superintendent of police. Each district was divided into station, and the station was called same slide. Each station was under a kotwal and the village came under chowkidars. Finally, because of the drought in 1770, the British started appointing only British magistrates. The police officers were now under the power of these British magistrates. There was continuous changes, but Indians were not given a post above Subedar. Question 3, in permanent zamindari system, the Indian farmers were born in debt, lived in debt and died in debt. How can you prove? In order to generate steady revenue per annum, in the zamindari system, there was a pressure to generate a steady revenue per annum. Per annum means every year. Zamindar became the landowner and he gave an agreement to pay these taxes to the company. He was free to collect any amount of land tax from the farmer. He could retain the excess of money if he collected more. So this system was the permanent zamindari system. It was introduced by Lord Moshousho. Question 3, in permanent zamindari system, the Indian farmers were born in debt, lived in debt and died in debt. How? Prove. So students, under the zamindari system, the zamindars became landowners and they were free to collect any amount of land tax from the farmers, and they could retain the excess money that they collected. Both the zamindars and the company benefited from the system, but the farmers were grave sufferers. The farmers and the farming laborers suffered due to irregular working opportunities in the farming lands. They were exploited and were forced to live a life of insecurity. This slide is not there. What were the main aspects of Rayatwari system? It was first implemented in Baramal region by Alexander Reed in the year 1792. The system was later implemented in Madras and Mysore region by Thomas Munro in 1801. In this system, the tiller of the land was recognized as the owner of the land, and the owner had to pay 50% of the produce as tax to the company or to the government. The land tax had 30 years tenure and the tax could be reviewed after this tenure. Through this, those small farmers were given land ownership. They were subjected to more suffering because of heavy taxes, and when they could not repay taxes, they were forced into taking loans from moneylenders to pay the tax, and this way they lost ownership of land. Question 5. What are the effects of the British land taxes? A new class of zamindars who exploited the farmers was created. The farmers who were subjected to the exploitation of the zamindars became landless. Slowly, land became a commodity. Loans could be raised by mortgaging the lands. Many zamindars also had to mortgage their lands in order to pay land taxes. Agricultural sector became commercialized and had to grow raw materials needed by industries back in England. The money lenders became very strong. Next question, make a list of effects of British education in India. Question 6, make a list of the effects of British education in India. 1. Indians could develop modernity, secularism, democratic attitudes and rationality along with nationalistic ideas. The impetus or a push was given for the local literature and languages. It facilitated unity in thinking process amongst the educated class. Periodicals started emerging. New social and religious reform movements took place. The thoughts of thinkers like J.S. Mill, Montesquieu and Rousseau brought fresh thinking in the minds of Indians. The freedom struggles were taking place across the globe, influenced Indians also. Indians could understand and appreciate their own rich tradition. So like this, the British education brought new thinking and cultural perception and progressive attitudes amongst the Indians. Question 7. What were the restrictions imposed in the Regulating Act? As follows. Before the implementation of the Act, there were 3 presidencies under the British rule, the Bengal, Madras and Bombay. All these were independent, but now they came under the Bengal presidency. The Governor of Bengal became the Governor General of all the 3 presidencies. He was authorized to direct, exercise control and supervise over the other 2 presidencies. The Bombay and Madras presidencies could not declare war or enter into any peace agreements without prior approval of Governor General of Bengal presidency and the board of directors of the company. According to this act, Supreme Court of Judicature was established in Calcutta. Question 8. What are the important features of the Indian Government Act 1858? The license of East India Company was cancelled and India was brought under the direct administration of the Queen. The post of Governor General was changed into Viceroy. Lord Canning became the first Viceroy of India. A new post called Secretary of State for India was created with 15 members in a council to support him. A Council of India was created to assist the Secretary of State for India. Question 9. How does the Indian Government Act of 1935 become the base of Indian Constitution? A very important question. Most of the provisions in the Indian Constitution are based on this act. This act allowed the formation of fully responsible government by Indians. It was applicable to both Indian Principalities and also to the British India regions. The features were as follows. A federal system of Indian Principalities, British governed regions and Dominion states was formed. Reserve Bank of India was established. Diarchy was abolished at the regional level and it was established at the center. A federal court was also established. Question 10. How does the Indian Government Act of 1935? We finished this. Question then, bring out the important features of Government of India Act 1919. They are, this act formulated the Bi-Cameral legislative body. There was a lower house and an upper house that was formed. Diarchy was allowed at regional governments. A High Commissioner was appointed for India. They promised to improve local self-government. The provincial budget was separated from the central budget and separate Electoral College was now extended for Muslims, Sikhs, Anglo-Indians and the Europeans. Students, this brings us to the end of the chapter, The Impact of British Rule in India, one of the longest chapters in your book of history. I hope you all will work hard, read it segment by segment. One day you can learn about the military system, one day about the police system, one day about the administrative system, one day about the land tax, one day about social cut. One day you can learn about education and one day about constitutional changes. This way when you break it down, you will learn it easily. Okay students, goodbye. See you until then. Do practice the objective and subjective questions and work hard for your upcoming examination. Ta-da!